Tracer, you really ought to look both ways before you cross the street. And perhaps you should have thought twice before you crossed me. And who am I? None of your fucking business. But all you need to know about me is that I am justice, and I just love hanging out in the sky. I'm like a righteous cloud on a rainy day, and the rain I'm packing is a little on the explosive side, and I've seen today's weather forecast, and I'm afraid it's gonna be pissing down. Today, I'm Pharah, and on a day where I'd like to separate myself from all the insects that prowl along the ground, I will opt to take flight like a majestic bird. Except this bird is packing heat, in the form of a rocket launcher, of course, and while explosives, when you fire them at the bad guys, are traditionally quite generous, these particular rockets are very rewarding when you take them a step further and land them directly. So with Pharah, you want to train yourself and always look for that bullseye, because while a slight misfire at best will do up to 80 splash damage depending on your proximity, landing a direct hit with one of these rockets will deal a devastating 120 damage. And almost nobody can take that kind of damage without fearing for their life and scrambling for safety, and God help them if they try to run, then you'll have a hell of a view to watch it from. And should they choose to stay and fight, well, they'd best hope they don't get hit again. Getting proficient with the rockets is the most key ingredient to Pharah's success story, but she has a few unique tools you'll need to get to know if you want to take it up a notch. We'll start with Concussive Blast, and this is the trickiest one. It has quite a variety of very niche uses. The entire purpose of this ability is for knockback. It deals 0 damage, and you're using it entirely to displace enemies or yourself. Concussive Blast does affect Pharah, which, to clarify, is certainly not a bad thing. Now, this knockback is quite potent, both in the force and the radius in which it'll affect people. It travels fast, and it travels in a straight line. It'll explode immediately on contact, and anyone within 8 meters of the explosion will be thumped in the direction directly away from the blast. Now, as I said, as the Pharah player, you can knock yourself around with this thing, perhaps for the purposes of knocking yourself away from an incoming enemy. Perhaps you need to propel yourself forward a short distance, but quickly, for positioning purposes like chasing down an enemy with a final rocket, or to rapidly set yourself in place for a surprise ultimate. Perhaps you're just leaving spawn, and you want to get to the battle a little faster. You can shoot behind you to propel yourself forward, but if you're on the ground, you can hover a little, look straight down, and fire, and that will also propel you straight forward, and it'll spare you the inconvenience of spinning your camera around. While Concussive Blast does 0 damage, it can be used for offensive purposes, and sometimes can even be entirely lethal by itself. King of the Hill maps are loaded with edges where you can knock people off to their death, and Pharah, as a result, can get a ton of environmental kills. If you're lined up against enemy heroes who can't lift themselves back up to safety, you're gonna have a fun time. Perhaps you're up against a pair, a cheesy pair, who need to be separated. Good thing to know about Bastion is when in sentry form, he's immune to knockbacks, which in this case certainly worked against him. Concussive Blast is strange in that its uses are so specific and can be difficult to enforce. Oftentimes you'll fire it and find that you accomplished very little, and then it's on a 12-second cooldown. But here's a situation where I can get some good use out of it. Soldier thinks he's safe in cover, but I can put him exactly where I want him. Concussive Blast is the kind of ability that takes a lot of practice, not just in terms of aiming it, but realizing the situations where you should and should not use it. Displacing Reinhardt's is always a good one. He was left stranded and surrounded by my team, which means certain death, and as for his team that he was protecting, they're all exposed. The other side of Pharah, the Jet, is a lot simpler, but the difficulty comes in managing your resources. Pharah doesn't always need to be in the sky. In fact, sometimes it's beneficial for her to stay down. You don't want to be lingering around in the air in the eyes of someone who can nail you at long range. Widowmaker, for example, is your worst nightmare, and you'll want to keep a low profile under her watch. On the other hand, you excel against certain short-range heroes who simply can't hit you from afar. Reaper and Junkrat come to mind. They'll never hit you as long as you keep your distance. But for everything in between, you want to keep a mix of walking on high ground and gently hovering. But having Jump Jet off cooldown and ready to go is extremely important because besides a good concussion blast, Jump Jet is what's going to help you escape versus someone who's trying to close you down. Which is why you'll have to settle for being grounded sometimes as Pharah, because if you try and stay in the air the whole time, your hover jets will eventually give out and will need time to breathe, and your Jump Jet will be stuck cooling down when you need it most. Now as for Justice, well, this is a crazy ult. It's so much damage, but it's unlikely you will ever see it take it to its full potential. You are looking at 3,600 damage total. You will lock yourself in place, even in the air, for 3 straight seconds and shoot 100 rockets in those 3 seconds, each dealing 36 damage, and I believe that's for direct hits or splash damage. I don't think there's any fall off, but you know what, there's so many of them, I don't even know. These rockets will scatter about in a huge spray away from Pharah, but the reality is, as wild as the rockets may be, there are just so many of them that you will be able to concentrate enough damage to kill anybody that you want. The downside is, quite obviously, that because you're locked in place for 3 seconds, you are an easy target, and as a result, Justice reigns from above. May be the single most interrupted ult in the whole game. In fact, I don't even think it's close. You won't always be able to get the perfect barrage, but you can settle for something decent each time. You don't want to be too far, you don't want to be too close. You don't want to make it obvious and telegraph it to them seconds in advance. You want to arrive fast, you want to catch them by surprise, and get them while they're distracted. Man, even when you get one of the good ones off, you still get pinged in the face by the poxy Widowmaker. Well, that should illustrate the danger of it, and that was one of the highlight barrages, right? The kind where it has such an influence that you'll go on to win the game, since it knocked out so many enemies, but they won't all look like that. Sometimes you'll just have to pop it for a very important target, like a Mercy. Then again, if it's Mercy that you're hunting, you're probably gonna catch her patient in the splash. Perhaps you'll need to solo ult a tank, but if that's what it takes to push through, perhaps it's best. But anything is better than sitting on your barrage and banking it for the perfect one that'll never come. Okay, maybe that one wasn't better, but hey, we got one, and we're alive. Any barrage where Pharah delivers the line without choking halfway through is probably above average. Tracer. You can't run forever. It's a perfect day for some justice. This has been Pharah. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.